Hi, this is Byron Stripling from the Columbus Jazz Orchestra, and this is Offstage Live. Now, if you're like me, you know the Columbus Jazz Orchestra is delicious, nutritious, good, and good for you. And we are ready to go and get to work serving you with the greatest music on the planet. And as soon as we're able, we're going to do that. And we'll be back with some of the finest hand clapping, toe tapping, belly pounding music on the planet. Our book selection for this week and our book quote comes from James Allen, this great book, As a Man Thinketh, where he reminds us that circumstances don't make the man, they only reveal him to himself. Again, that book was written in the 1800s and is available for free on the internet. And it would certainly help you as we continue to courageously confront the existing quarantine. Incidentally, if you'd like to help the Columbus Jazz Orchestra and the Jazz Arts Group, please consider returning your tickets that you may have purchased for our canceled concerts in March and in April for those shows. You just simply go to CAPA, the Columbus Association for Performing Arts, and you just call them up at 614-469-0939, and you can just ask them to donate your tickets back to them. And in that same spirit, we want you to consider making a 100% tax-deductible gift to the Jazz Arts Group via our Jazz Emergency Fund. And you just go to jazzemergencyfund.com. That's a website, jazzemergencyfund.com. And there you can make a gift via credit card or get information on where to send the check. And the little things you see on the screen sort of, illustrate how you will go about doing it. It's really easy. So we encourage you to do that. Those include gifts of so many of the great people that have helped us since this quarantine has happened. And all gifts of all types. What we know is that no act of kindness is ever wasted. So any amount will help. We especially want to thank Frank Berfrini, Birinyi. I cannot pronounce that. I apologize. And if people are laughing at me like Hamilton, I'm really ticked at that because they shouldn't be. Barbara, because I can't read. Barbara and Gary Douglas, as well as Stephen and Lisa Lex, Kyle, George, and Vanessa and Ann, as well as Jerry Jurgensen, our friend Dennis, who we had a chance to speak with by phone this week, Ann and Tom, John and Patricia, Tom and Joan, and Sandy, who is so cute, and so many others. Also, you'll be hearing about this on social media, but on Tuesday, May 5th, that's Giving Tuesday. It's an International Day of Giving. If you have the means, please give generously to us and other arts organizations. So again, please visit us at jazzemergencyfund.com. We are fully aware that not everybody is able to help us financially at this time, and we understand that. However, you can help us in other ways. So share the good news of the Jazz Arts Group in the following ways. Through our Facebook page, just like us, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, and choose our organization on Amazon Smile. I'm pleased to announce that next Sunday we work on a world-renowned jazz scholar, band leader, and jazz saxophonist Lauren Schaumburg. He's an alumnus of the Benny Goodman Band. In fact, in 1985, he started his own band, and Benny was so impressed with that Benny came out of retirement and used Lauren's band as a final goodbye. He's a former executive director and currently senior scholar at the National Museum of Jazz in Harlem and lectures at jazz at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, as well as at the Juilliard School of Music. You'll hear about his associations with the great Teddy Wilson, Roy Eldridge, Panama Francis, Joe Jones, and so many others. With profound knowledge of all things jazz, this will be one of our finest interview presentations. Ladies and gentlemen, now for the main event. They call him the Hammer. And he's been igniting the fire on bandstands all over the world for over 40 or I think 50 years. I was talking to him. It's like 50 years. He's an old man, ladies and gentlemen. Early in his career, he had the ability to slash and burn through fast tempos and gently brush his way through ballads, attracted the likes of Woody Herman, Monty Alexander, and Ray Brown. Later, the Count Basie Band, Oscar Peterson, Ella Fitzgerald leaned on him to anchor their rhythm sections. His Richmond, Indiana roots ran deep. However, Indiana University came calling, but not for long, because then Los Angeles came calling, and he was soon doing studio work with Barbra Streisand, Rosemary Clooney, and a host of Hollywood luminaries. He was then snapped up by Ray Brown along with Gene Harris, and they created one of the classic jazz trios. And then he started working with his own trio, and since then he has never looked back. He's accompanied just a few folks. I want to name some of their names: Natalie Cole, Diana Krall, Milt Jackson, Mel Torme, John Pizzarelli, Benny Carter, Lilo Schifrin. I ain't done. I ain't done yet. I ain't done yet. George Shearing, Dr. John Clark Terry, Toshiko Akiyoshi. I ain't done yet, ladies and gentlemen. Did I say Scott Hamilton, Harry Sweets Ellison, Keely Smith, Bill Holman, Herb Ellis, and Barney Kessel. He's also a frequent guest of the WDR Big Band in Cologne, Germany. And you have seen him on Natalie Cole's great performances PBS special Unforgettable and the Oscar Peterson documentary Life in the Key of Oscar. Before we bring him on, I'd like you to witness his hard stringing, swinging artistry and his one of a kind big band sound. Alexa, could we hear a little bit of Jeff Hamilton with the Clayton Hamilton Big Band? Woo, Lord have mercy. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Jeff Hamilton. Look, before you say anything, I want to ask you a question. Before you say one word, that is a complex shout course. I think it's Squatty Roo, and it's easy to screw that one up. It's really easy. The drummer takes the lead on that, and you could make it sound easy or incredibly hard to play that shout course. How do you make it look so damn easy? And what do you do to help the band so you kind of stay out the way? What the heck happened there? That is, I've never seen anything like that. I get chills when I see it. So talk to me and make sure your mute button is on.
All right. All right. Well, first of all, thank you, Byron. I'll answer your question first, and I'll get to what I was going to say. But that was actually a Ray Brown shout chorus. It started in Ray Brown's trio. And Ray would always ask me, because of my big band experience, he said, "You've had more big band experience than I have. How does this shout chorus sound to you?" So he'd run it by me. And when he came up with this one, I said, that's a little off the wall. Are you sure you want to do that? And he goes, "Yeah, I like it. Let's do it." And then, Clayton heard it in the trio, and he said, "Well, let me orchestrate it for the big band." So now trying to get 16 people to do that, or 19, as opposed to a trio, so I had a little practice getting it down before we took it into the big band. So I guess I was cheating. But thank you for that introduction. I wanted to say I appreciate that, all those names, but it sounds like I couldn't keep a job.
I didn't want to say that, but I'll let you say it. You were with those people for like an hour each,
Right.
But another just quick thing on the what we just heard. I mean, so how do you make it? It looks easy to you when we see you play in that situation, trio or big band. But that, I want to go back to it. That's a hard shout course. I guess it's your knowledge of having done it a while, or you're just used to doing that. Because you make it easy because I've played with you in a big band. You make it easy, and one thing that you said, trust me.
Yeah.
So when I'm playing and I'm like, well, is the fill over yet? Should I count it out? and basically you said, I'll hand it to you. Like, here you go. Like, so it's like basically getting us as a band to relax and trusting you, because you'll get, and that shout course illustrates it. Like, it makes sense when you hear it, but on paper, when you look at it, I don't get it. Any tips for drummers that would try to play that shout course, or any good shout course?
Well, thank you for the compliment, and that's the highest compliment any drummer can get from a lead trumpet player, is what you just said. You can thank John Von Olin for that, because John, who I studied with, I left Indiana University after 2 years to study with John for 8 months, and then landed the Tommy Dorsey band, recommended by John Clayton. He always talked about getting inside the music, get inside the chart, get inside the arrangement, know what the third trombone player is doing, know what everybody in the band's doing, and keep them in mind, and then figure out what they need to sound as good as they possibly can. So, it starts with the lead trumpet player, and I'm singing the lead trumpet part, and I'm not thinking about what I'm playing as much as what I'm thinking about the ensemble. So
So
it's like ba ba da 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 yeah ba ba da da. So what I'm playing, I'm not thinking like da 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 bo 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 bo. You know, I'm not thinking what lick I'm going to play that's hot. I'm thinking what's going to set up this next section for them so that it's comfortable. And the great Mel Lewis said, I like to feel like an oversized stuffed sofa that the band can sit on when they play, not lay on, but sit
yeah,
on comfortably.
yeah. Now, when you and I didn't want to get this deeply into the drum stuff right away, but I got to. When you were playing shout courses like that, now we've heard that Buddy would just listen first time around, and I heard that Mel would actually do that too. Even though he was a great listener, I heard he would just sort of play time and see what's going on. Is
Right.
that the way you would approach learning that a shout course like that for the first time?
Yeah, pretty much. Although I do like to read, because I feel like through Von Olin, I learned how to interpret on the spot. So you kind of configure, you know what the ranger is like, hopefully, and what their style is. And incidentally, I think every arranger has a drummer in mind when they're arranging. You know, Bob Florence had Nick Ceroli, Duke Ellington had Sonny Greer first, and then Sam Woodyard and Louis Bellson. You know, for all their what's going to be the glue on the drums to bring all the sections together. So if you know the arranger's style of writing, which in my case, John, you know, I've known him since 1972, then you kind of have a better shot at interpreting what you need to do to hand it to the band. But always keep the band in mind more than what you're playing. But
Right.
Buddy had to do that. Buddy didn't read music, so he had to sit and listen to it, and he had almost a photographic memory that he could hear it once and go up and play the chart and not miss anything. So, you know, I
Wow.
don't have that. So it's good for me to read the music. I don't know anybody else that has that either, but he was
Yeah.
the greatest. There'll never be another one like him. You know,
Yeah.
nobody could do what he did.
Well, if we have a chance, I want you because there's a couple experiences that you have, Buddy, you've told me about before. If we have a chance, I want to get to those. But one more thing on this, and I'm not supposed to be on this, supposed to move forward. But just on that, and this sort of describes your style to me because what you've done over the years, and hopefully we'll talk more about this, is you can now hear a drummer, you can go, that's Jeff Hamilton. Like you've developed your thing. Before I might have said, oh, there's a guy influenced by Buddy and Mel or something. But now it's like all you. It's like I could, oh, that's Jeff Hamilton playing right there. You've got a unique thing you've done with that you do with the bass drum. I absolutely love. There's this thing where we used to be told, feather the bass, do 4 on the floor. Maybe you still do that, but what I hear you mostly doing on the bass drum is, and it's big and fat and feels so good, just accenting me, like just giving me a boom, go, and you'll give me a couple of those, and I'll say, oh yeah, like it's like right in the right place. So are you doing both? Are you playing 4/4 on the bass drum softly and accenting it, or how does it work? Do you ever stop playing the bass drum?
Depends how much the gig pays. Yeah, the 4 beats on the bass drum, I do it quietly. And Mel did it. All my favorite drummers, the bebop drummers did it. You just couldn't hear it on the record. I saw Elvin Jones do it. I saw Philly Joe Jones do it. I saw Max Roach do it. But they played it softly, and they were playing smaller bass drums. And they call it feathering the bass drum on all 4 beats because you're thinking of a feather just caressing the bass drum head. So that's the 4 beats that you get. That's the pulse. Your time comes from the floor. And then the bomb dropping that you're talking about, a la Don Lamond and some of these great drummers that would accent. And Kenny Clark did that when bebop was introduced with Dizzy. Dizzy wanted bomb dropping all the time. So you're feathering the bass drum. So the bass drum sounds like boom, 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 oh, boom, 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 oh, dun, 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 dun. So you're going in and out of that, but you shouldn't hear the bass drum on all 4 beats. You should just feel it. And every bass player I played with has commented that their sound is bigger when I'm playing the bass. In fact, one night at the Blue Note, came back from Japan with Gene Harris, and Marlena Shaw was singing with us, and we had a shuffle going, man. And my drums didn't make it. I had to play the house drums, and they was like black rock and roll heads on them and pillows in them, shoved in them. And I started getting a cramp after the flight. I started getting a cramp in my bass drum leg, you know. So I just raised it for 4 bars. And Ray, the setup was so small, he had his back to me next to the hi-hat. And I just raised my foot up off the pedal for 4 bars to twist the ankle to try to get the spasm out. And over his shoulder after 2 bars, Ray said, "What's the matter? Your foot broke?" So that's how important that is with the upright bass and the bass drum forming that groove together.
Right, right. Wow. Well, I'm supposed to go to other questions, but this one popped into my head. I think that you told me you got to meet Joe Jones.
I did. I was on the
Tell us
Tommy
about
Dorsey.
that. Can we tell people who Joe Jones was first?
Sure. Papa Joe Jones was the first Count Basie drummer with the great all-American rhythm section. Walter Page on bass and Freddie Green on guitar. And Papa Joe gets the credit for moving the time from the snare drum rolls for a drummer over to the hi-hat. So instead of on the snare drum, he played on the hi-hat. And before that, it was a low boy. There were 2 cymbals that were down by your socks, hence the sock cymbal. And he had the companies raise it up so he could play it with a stick. And so he really gets the credit for streamlining the beat with the Basie band by playing that. Well, as any big band drummer, if you're in your right mind, you check out who Joe Jones is. So when I was on the Tommy Dorsey band, I'm 20 years old, blow into New York, never been to New York, right out of Richmond, Indiana, sunrise, and I couldn't believe it. I stayed up until the drum shop opened. We pulled in at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I stayed up to the drum shop. I go to the drum shop, and there's Papa Joe sitting in the office. And I thought, this can't be Papa Joe, And he was reading the newspaper, and I asked the owner if I could meet him. And he says, "Hey, Joe, some kid wants to meet you." And I went, "Oh, no, what am I going to say?" And real quickly, I asked him if he could give me a lesson because I was in town for a couple of days. And he says, "Young talent," called everybody young talent. "Young talent, I don't teach." And he put his feet back up on the desk and ordered the paper. And I said, "Well, is there anything you could tell me that would help a big band drummer?" He takes his feet off the desk, puts the paper, and he goes, "I'm going to tell you 2 things. Most important thing. Number 1, always wear white socks when you play because your feet sweat. You get athlete's foot. You'll be on the bus. You don't know when you get rid of that stuff." Okay. He said, and the second thing, and I'm thinking, here's the secret of swinging. Here it is. And he says, "Always carry a ham sandwich in your coat pocket because you never know when the bus is going to stop. Good day, young talent." And he puts the paper back up, and I was dismissed.
This is one of the legends of jazz,
Yeah. So I told Jake Anna that story, and Jake says, "Oh, you mean he's moved on from the tin of sardines in his pocket?"
That's fantastic. As long as you're there, didn't you meet Philly Joe Jones?
Yeah, I had a lesson with Philly Joe Jones. I was with Monty.
Tell us about how that happened.
Well, Monty Alexander, John Clayton, and I were together from June '75 to the end of June of '77. And right as soon as I joined him that summer, we played Philadelphia, called Charlie's Playboy Lounge, linoleum floor on the bandstand with wrought iron around the bandstand to protect the band, and a raggedy upright piano. And Bobby Durham lived 2 blocks down the street, the great drummer who I had followed on Monty's gig. And then he walks in, and I'm thinking, oh man, I'm getting nervous. I started choking. The only time I've ever choked was like, man, this guy should be up here, not me. I'm 21 years old or something. And third tune, Philly Joe in a table of 4 walks by the drums and sits right next to the China cymbal in a booth. Well, stereo panic. And after the set, I said, man, I can't play. And John Clayton said, go meet Bobby Durham. Xander said, hey, come on, Alexander, Monty Alexander said, come on, I want to introduce you to Durham. So I went over, and Durham had the hat on and the cigarette, and he looked at me over his shoulder. And Monty says, "This is my drummer, Jeff Hamilton." And Durham said, he didn't shake my hand. I had my hand out. And Durham looks at me over his shoulder. He says, "Yeah, I heard you." And he blew smoke in my face. And so I turned around, and rightly so. I didn't sound very good, right? And so John said, "Well, it can't be any worse talking to Philly Joe Jones." So I talked to Philly Joe Jones. So I go over to Philly. "Sorry to interrupt your table here, but you're a huge hero of mine. I've transcribed so many of your things. May I have a lesson with you?" And he, no, I don't teach. And his lady said, "Yes, you do. Here's how you get out here, young man, to our place tomorrow. It's 3 buses and a taxi." So I got up the next morning. I got there at 11, I think, and he wasn't there. So she called where he was, and he showed up right away. And he was like a little puppy dog, like, "Oh, I'm sorry I'm late. What do you want? What can I show you?" And it was like, wow. And that lesson went until 7:30 at night. And
Are you serious?
He drove me back to the hotel in time for me to jump in a suit and get to Charlie's Playboy Lounge for the downbeat.
That is crazy.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Wow.
I asked him everything. I knew exactly the information I wanted from him, and I hoped he would be open to it. He was fantastic. He told me everything I asked him, brush playing, where all of his soloing ideas came from, the Charlie Wilcoxon snare drum rudimental book. I mean, just everything it was fantastic. Not a drum in his apartment. We played red vinyl bar stools the whole time.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
1975. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to quickly go back to your roots, and I know that you grew up with two sisters, and I know you love them dearly. Mm-hmm. And then you have your oldest sister passed away a few years ago, I remember, and I think I remember seeing her at one of the gigs with the CJO years ago. Mm-hmm. And then your sister Ann, I think, came to the Buddy Rich concert that you did a tribute to Buddy Rich with us years ago. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think she may have also come to the one where we just did recently with Benny Green and Clayton and you. And what did you learn, or what was it like to be in a house full of, it was your mother and two sisters? You were the only guy there, you know. What was it like, that kind of experience?
Well, first of all, I'm impressed by your memory, Byron. Thanks for remembering family like that. Louis Bellson was always like that. You know, you'd see him 5 years later, and he'd say, my mother's name was Harry. He says, how's Harriet? You know, how do you remember all this? You know, so I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
My family was very musical. Both my sisters studied piano lessons, and Anne played alto saxophone and upright bass, and was first chair in everything she chose to play. And Melanie was really a fantastic piano player, and we thought was going to go on to be a concert pianist. I mean, she was really terrific, and ended up being a lifelong private teacher, and helped so many students reach what they wanted. So and followed my mother as a church organist in the Baptist church in Richmond. Wow. So you know, we always had music in the family, and I just kind of grew up figuring that was normal. You know, isn't this what everybody does? And yeah. And at sometimes it felt like I had three mothers, you know, which they joke about, because it's like, you know, somebody say, you're not gonna leave with those socks on with those pants, are you? You know, like
right,
that.
Right.
Match,
yeah.
You know, are you gonna hold the door for me, or you know? So I grew up with a lot of manners and understanding that part about growing up with three females, and sometimes it was three mothers, but it was also two loving sisters too, and we were all in it together. Whenever we didn't agree with the parents, we were all in it together, you know. So
wow,
very close-knit family, yeah.
Well, I remember going to Richmond, and I was going to play the Richmond Symphony. I think Bright Hop might have been that gig, Bob Bright Hop, with me, and I think I mentioned it to you or something, and I said, hey, I can get tickets for your mom. So your mom came to that concert, the symphony concert in Richmond, and I got to meet her there, and I kind of remembered, like, she was giving me a little bit.
Oh yeah. Nobody was safe in that family. Byron, you're freezing up a little bit.
Yeah, and you froze up too.
Okay.
So stop freezing.
Okay.
Are we better now?
I didn't want to answer the question.
Oh gosh.
No, she had a great sense of humor, and would go after if she thought it was appropriate. You know, she was nobody was safe.
So maybe that's where you got some of your sense of humor, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm.
And what about, I remember one time you were on a session and you told me you needed the correct melody to a tune or something, and you called her from the session.
Yeah. Right. John Clayton always said, if we were on the road with Diana Krall and all, we're talking about a melody, and I don't think that's the right melody note. I think it's a half step instead of a whole step. John would say, call Harriet, she'll know. And we'd be in the dressing room, and I'd call Mom, and she'd sing it for us. And I said, well, okay, there's your answer. So we were at Capitol Studios recording, and I thought, I'm kind of known as the melody police sometimes. And so I think that's a wrong note on that. So I went out in the hallway, and Mom had pretty bad dementia by this time. So I called her in the hallway, and I said, Mom, she was in a facility by that time. And I said, did you just get back from having lunch? And she said, well, I don't know. And I said, okay, well, listen, we're doing this song. Do you remember how the melody goes on this? And she starts singing it right off the bat. Wow. And it's perfect. And I
Wow.
said, okay, she got through the two A sections. And I said, okay, that's all I need. She says, well, wait, there's more. And she went to the bridge of the song. And I said, okay, Mom, I'm working. I got to go with it. But she couldn't remember what she had for breakfast, but she remembered the
Oh,
melody of that,
yeah. Yeah, my father the same with it. Anytime I wanted to communicate with him, he's pretty much shut down now. I just start singing, and he used to direct the church choir, and he conducted me and had me sing solos. And if I just start singing, he would be right there with me. But he
Yeah.
didn't know who I was or anything like that.
Power of music,
Yes, yes, and we're so blessed to be a part of that. Um, but you've got this incredible memory. Was your whole family like that? Because you can remember stuff that God, I wish you would forget about me. And but you just won't. You refuse to. And you bring it up. So do you think, is that a family thing, that memory? Let me give you another example. I remember you on Basie's band. One time we got really bored. We had one of those long bus rides, and you grabbed the mic and you did, I swear it was like 45 minutes of jokes.
Yeah. Clay Jenkins and I were sharing that night. Yeah, he got on a roll
Oh, that's
too.
right. Clay did a couple. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were a tag team, but I think, for the most part, everybody had a pretty good memory, but they would always kind of defer to me, and my sister Ann has a great memory. I just asked her about an uncle of ours the other day, and she was naming the address of the street and everything. So, they all pretty much remember. I think we remember things that really mean a lot to us and we kind of hang on to. And I can't remember a recipe to save my life. My wife gets so upset with me. She said, you just made that last week. You don't remember the temperature in the oven for that? I go, nope, it doesn't matter. but I can play the shout course to Tommy Dorsey's Opus 1 if you stomp it off,
Wow. So does that memory thing, do you think it goes, because I rarely, you kind of look at music for a couple rehearsals, and then you're pretty much done with looking at the music.
Yeah.
You think that's part of your memory, that kind of thing?
Well, I want to memorize it because some people aren't going to like this, but your band's only going to be as good as your drummer. And John Von Olin pointed that out to me. And my first night on Woody's band, he turned around and he said, "Don't forget this is your band, pal." And I'm going, I don't want my own band. I'm 23 years old. I want to be in your band, But he was saying, they're reacting to you. You're going to hand them everything they need. You chose this instrument. It's your responsibility in this ensemble. So you got to live up to it. Yeah. So I think through John Von Olin, he stressed that as long as you make that music yours as soon as you can, then you're free to offer it to everybody what they need instead of getting through your figures and figuring out what drum fill you're going to play in the next 4 bars for the band to come in, because it gets too analytical that way. Just you got to sing the stuff, and I think the sooner you memorize it, the better. I think the memorization came from 8 years old, taking snare drum lessons from John McMahon in Richmond, Indiana, and we had to memorize our snare drum things, and we had to get them ready for state. Like we go to state contests and district, you had to go in and have it memorized. And I think because I really wanted to do that, I think my memorization skills probably started earlier than a lot of folks. And I have great focus, I have to say. I mean, I concentrate. Like Noel Lewis said, that when he came out to hear us with the Basie band, when you were on the band, we were on the band together, and he rode the bus with us. Do you remember that?
I was going to ask you about that. Why the hell did you do that? I was nervous.
That's what the rest of the cats said too. Don't ever do that, because as Mel would do, he talked about himself all the way on the bus trip to the gig, and he said,
that was a long bus trip, and you had Mel in the back with you, and he talked about himself for like 3 hours. It was great. It was great stuff, but he didn't stop. And then I played for Streisand, and she loved me, and which. It was all true, but it was all about himself.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, but anyway, on that gig, I said, "Well, so you heard what I do. Now, what do I need to do?" And he said, "You sound fine. Just remember to concentrate from count off to cut off." And I went, "Oh boy, what a generic comment, And I thought about it after he left. Concentrate. You know what? I won't mention who, but somebody in the band was trying out something on a solo that night, and they weren't locking in with the rhythm section, and I just kind of phased out, and I just played time, and we weren't really planning it, and the tempo just kind of goosed a little bit, picked up just a little bit, and then it came back when the band came in, and I went, aha, concentrate from count off to cut off. Now, as a drummer, that's challenging. And a lot of drummers don't do that. And that's why their tempos go crazy. And, you know, we're not all machines. I mean, my tempos aren't perfect, but you try to keep them as close as you can to where the thing started. You know, that's where the piece was written and meant to be played. So that concentration is really important for me. And I think I keep that in mind all the time. You can't, you know, somebody plays a solo, they can go to the bar and get a cocktail or something and come back and play the head as a horn player. But a drummer and a bass player, they've got to be concentrating through the whole thing.
Right, right. Good stuff. And we talked about John, or you talked about John Von Olin for a second. Tell us about this man who was not a household name, who, you know, obviously not so many people knew who he was, but if you were just ever in the presence of that beat, you never forgot it. And there's something to be said. People need to know that there's jazz musicians out there that nobody's heard of. And used to be every state had their guys. Mm-hmm. And for Indiana, it was John Von Olin. Mm-hmm. If you could just tell us a little bit about him and make us remember his greatness.
Well, first of all, the Indiana drummers from that period, and maybe a little after me, people don't talk about it too much, but there's something about a Hoosier beat. Jazz drummers that grew up in Indiana, and none of Joe Hunt, Harold Jones, you know, none of us can talk about what that is. We don't know, but you hear it and you go, you're from Indiana, you know? Yeah. And I don't know what it is, but Von Olin epitomized that. He had this real raw, big, wide, fat beat that the whole band could crawl in, and you never felt like you had to hurry to get any place, and he's going to make it so comfortable for you. And I like to say it was like a 56 Cadillac on a gravel road, those big steel cars that weren't going to move. You could have all the wind and rain, and that thing wasn't moving. It was just going to cruise at whatever, 50 miles an hour right down that road. That was John Von Olin's time, and it was steady, and you wanted to play with it. That's one of the things Mel Lewis instilled in John Von Olin too, because that's the lineage from Tiny Khan to, even though Mel wouldn't acknowledge that, but Tiny Khan, the great drummer, and Mel Lewis. And Gene was before that, because Gene Krupa was Mel's guy. When Mel was 11 and 12, and Gene and Benny would go through Buffalo, Gene would call Mel and said, "I want you to sit next to the drums tonight." You know, so Mel would show up. So you hear kind of that calfskin, rub-a-dub kind of sound that Gene Krupa had. If you think of Sing, 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 and that sound, and Mel had that same sound. So that was handed down to Von Olin, and just make the band comfortable, make them feel comfortable when they play. And that's what John instilled in me, loosening up my beat, my right hand, because I was a Buddy Rich wannabe when I went to see him. Mm-hmm. And he was not a technical drummer at all. He claimed not to know the rudiments, even though he did a little bit. But he said, "No, I don't know what you just played, so you're going to have to get rid of all that stuff if you're going to study with me." So that's how he sort of transformed me into being a musical drummer, or a musician who owns the drums instead of a drummer playing in a big band.
Yeah. So you just did another Hamilton thing, and that's the impressions. And you've got Von Olin down, you know. It's like,
well, you know, baby, I had a lot of experience, you know, and it was, you know, it was nails listening to him nightly, you know.
Right. That's it, man. That's him. So, you know, quickly, you go on the Dorsey band, and you left Indiana to do that. Did you graduate?
No, I left after 2 years to study with
Von Olin. Such a loser.
Listen, I know we got a time limit. I'm trying to get everything in. No, I was not happy at Indiana University. I didn't make a jazz ensemble my first semester, you know, and it's like, well, do I belong here? You know, I'm not sure this is the kind of music that I want to play here. Some hack named Peter Erskine beat me out of the first band as a freshman. We were freshmen together, but I'm over it now. And I just saw Pete this morning on a Zoom thing we were on. So I mean, we're good friends. I'm joking about that. So I think I think I was so focused about wanting what Von Olin had to offer me, and I knew I could get it quickly because I really wanted it. So that's why I dropped out of IU. And proof is in the pudding, as they say, because 8 months later is when I went on the Tommy Dorsey band. After Von, he just transformed me into being the right drummer that I needed to be that in that band.
Yeah. And then I know right around that time you're finishing up, and then you guys get with Monty. I don't know the exact lineage of the whole thing, but Monty comes along.
Yeah.
Two things that seem pivotal to me. You're so young, you and John are on that with Monty, but you do this live record at Montreux, I think it was, and it kind of, everybody's blown away. Everybody's buying that record. And how old were you then?
22.
Were you still in their 20s? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I was a month shy. I was a month shy of 23, I think. Yeah.
I mean,
it was done in July 76. Yeah.
It becomes a classic record. I mean, I don't know if you knew it then when you guys were playing it. Okay, the other final thing I want to say about Monty, and you tell me this if this is true, and I might be overstepping my bounds here telling this story. I heard that Clayton wanted to put his bass in the car when you guys traveled, but you said, no, the drums go in the car, the bass goes on top. Is that true?
That's right.
Right?
That's right. Well, we ended up getting a van, so everybody was cool, you know.
That is wrong as two left feet, as Eric Dixon used to say. Oh, yeah. God.
Yeah.
And then you get the call to play with Woody Herman. Your first night, you must have played Caledonia, and somewhere La Fiesta must have come in there, and somewhere Fanfare for the Common Man. And then there were plenty of beautiful ballads, you know, and blueses like, what's it, Cousins and all that stuff. You're playing all these different styles because Woody was starting to go there. You play at a high school. You had to play some rock. You know, you're playing. You know, then you ended up doing a Chick Corea record with the Woody Herman band. So you got all these different styles coming at you. How did you approach the Woody thing? What was your first night like? Were you nervous? Did Woody like you immediately? Did he warm to you? Did the bass player like you? Did the band like you?
Well, he fired the bass player and the piano player after my first night, and brought in Pat Coyle and Mark Johnson from North Texas. And Woody didn't dig me because I'd held out for $50 more a week. I took a pay cut from Monty's gig to go with Woody, and I didn't know he had all those financial issues, or I wouldn't have done it. But they needed somebody at the time to go. Dan D'Imperio had just gotten off the band, and so he met me halfway, but he was going to make me earn it. So he just come off his car accident where he lost all of his teeth on the steering wheel. Yeah. And he had the walker with the bicycle horn, and he came out and he jammed a bar stool against my bass drum. And he sat with his back to me on the first set, the first night, and he threw the entire book at me, and he didn't call any tunes. And I didn't even open the book because I went unprepared. I'd done all my homework, which I've done for every band I've gone on. When I joined Oscar Peterson, he could throw any arrangement at me, and I knew what to do with it. So
well, that's a lot of records to buy.
It is, but you know that's what I want to do. So why shouldn't it be me? And I just did a lot of work, a lot of homework on it, and memorizing, like you're talking about. So I went on every gig ready. And I made sure that when I went on the gig that the leader didn't think of anyone else possible to sit in that drum chair. And that's what I was going to prove to Woody that night. And we got to Caledonia. I mean, it was, you're right. He started off with Four Brothers, forget Early Autumn. We went right to La Fiesta. We Fanfare for the Comet. We went to all of the hard ones that were, you know, real hard to play. And it was supposed to be a 4-hour dance, but the guy sold too many chairs. So they put chairs on the dance floor. It was a concert for 4 hours. And so he threw the book at me, but the last tune of the first set was Caledonia. And I looked over at the piano player, who will remain nameless, and I said, how fast do you guys take this now? Because Jake Hanna, you know, that's the one I'd practiced to, and it was like 6-7 seconds a chorus. And he says, just play it as fast as you can. And I was playing fast with Monty, you know, I mean, I could play faster then than I can now. And I just, okay. So Woody goes, 1, 2, 3, 4. Alan Pizzuti has played lead trumpet, and he went right with me. And it was 6 seconds a chorus. And Bruce Johnstone, the baritone player, had a stopwatch, and at the end of every chorus, he did this to me. He raised up 6. Next solo was over, he raised up 6. So every chorus we had that thing done in 15 minutes because, as you know, everybody soloed, and then it's a drum solo. And so Woody didn't talk to me for 2 weeks after that. I walked up to him that night and I said, Mr. Herman, I'm your new drummer, Jeff Hamilton. And he was hiding in the corner, and he looked up and he says, I know who you are, pal, and you sound marvelous. Now leave me alone. Because he was so bugged about the $50,
Right.
And then after a couple of weeks, he came in and he ended up really letting us know that he loved that rhythm section. We did 3 records in 1 month with that band, So I loved my experience with Woody Herman.
Yeah. Well, around that time, so, you did Woody, and then they kept calling you back. And then I was on the Basie band. We were in trouble. We called you, and it got to be this thing. Like somebody said that you should have cards printed. Save a band, Jeff Hamilton.
Right. That's right. John Fedchock on Woody's band said, "Man, just get a card print of Save a Band."
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. But I actually told Woody I owed him. I said I'd stay on for a year when I went on. And Ray Brown hired me after 6 months to join the LA4 because Shelly Manne left the group. So that's when I moved to Los Angeles in January of '78. And I said, Woody didn't want me to. He says, you won't like that band. And I said, well, you call me anytime and I'll come out and sub for a couple of weeks or a month if you need me. So I went on a dozen times after that. He'd call Soph and, that La Barbara. And then later on, John Riley actually went on after me. And he was also a sub, So
Right.
We all subbed.
Shortly after that, you're starting to get hooked up with Ray Brown, and you joined the LA4. I know. Tell us a little bit about that experience. And you started recording on Concord then too, I think.
That's true. So, the LA4 was with Concord, and Bud Shank was the alto saxophonist and flute, and Lorendo Almeida, the guitarist from Brazil. And so Shelly had heard me, and I didn't know that he'd kept me in mind.
Can you tell everybody who Shelly Manne was?
Shelly Manne is one of the greatest drummers who ever lived, and he's on probably every movie soundtrack in the 50s and 60s that you'll hear that has any kind of jazz or not. He played drums on the Love Boat theme, for example.
No way.
He was a #1 studio player in Los Angeles for years because those Kenton alumni folks, Bob Cooper, Shank, they all got off the road and settled in LA. And that's when the Marlon Brando, James Dean movies were coming in. They had a little jazz in them. So the contractors started calling the jazz guys because they could read as well as the classical players. And if they needed a little nightclub scene, then they'd just add that on, and you could do that too. So they were actually proud to be the first pioneers of studio players for jazz musicians at that time in the 50s. So he'd go to work at 9 in the morning and get home at 9 at night until the day he died. He was working on a Barry Manilow record the night that he passed, So he was just nonstop. Shelly was a huge, he was so creative and innovative, great brush player, melodic soloist. He played on Stan Kenton, one of the first Stan Kenton drummers that was a hero. He played Woody Herman's band, played with Dizzy Gillespie. Made all these great records for contemporary with Andre Previn. But he just did everything. One of the first drummers who really did great studio work and also jazz and a nice man on top of that. Really a nice man.
Yeah.
And today I have to stick in it that his wife Flip is 99 years old today. So we all wished her happy birthday this morning.
Oh, beautiful.
He had Shelly's Manhole, the jazz club.
That's right.
Famous for that.
Yeah. And then, so you were with Ray in that group. Did you know Ray Brown before the LA4? Or?
Yeah, I met him through John because John called him and said, I got a drummer for you that you'd like, and Ray said, okay, well, let me hear him. So we blew into town. We played the Lighthouse with Milt Jackson in Hermosa Beach. And Ray came in to see how business was because he was managing Milt and he wanted to see how many bodies were in the club. So he introduced himself to me summer of '77. Like I don't know, May or June or something. And I met him then, and I asked him if I could have lunch the next day. I wanted to talk to him about a career move and where I should go next. And the Ray Brown answer was, yeah, are you buying? So I said, of course, So we kind of sat down and he figured out what I wanted to do and listened to me and tried to discourage me from being a jazz drummer in '77 because everything was fusion then.
Hmm.
And I just stuck to my guns, and he offered to help when he could. And he said, you keep in touch with me. Every time you come into Los Angeles, keep in touch with me. Well, that Christmas of '77, Woody's band played Carnation Gardens, which you've been to many times at Disneyland. And I called him, and he said, hey, I'm glad you called me. I got this gig you might be interested in. The drummer just left. And I said, okay. And he says, a group called the LA4. And I said, Shelly Manne, and he goes, yeah, what's the matter? You don't want to do it? And I said, oh yeah, okay. So that's when we started talking about me joining the group. And a month later is when I got off Woody's band.
Yeah. But Ray, and I'll speak for you. You don't have to talk about any of this, but in addition to everything musically Ray taught you, certainly I think he must have taught you how to be a great business person, as he was. And I think he must have mentored you, and you don't have to speak about that, but that's well known that Ray took care of business, and you're known in the business as a guy that does that too. And
thank you. I think it's all under the heading of respect, and Ray talks about Norman Granz, the great Norman Granz at Jazz at the Philharmonic, teaching all of them that, I'm going to present you in tuxedos in concert halls. I'm getting you out of the dark clubs. And so Ray learned a lot. And he said he learned from Dizzy too, like good business ethic, and he also loved it. He loved being on the phone talking to club owners and arm wrestling them over $5, I mean,
right.
They really loved that,
Oh, beautiful. I want to play a real quick one for you. It's you with Oscar Peterson, and I love to talk after we look at this clip about Oscar. So Alexa, get that one ready. I want people to notice two things: the grunting that Oscar is doing, and then also he's in the middle of a solo, and I've never seen it. It is so cool. He's playing, and all of a sudden he claps his hands, and then he keeps playing. It's just like hand clapping time, baby. It's so slick. Alexa, could you pull up that Oscar Peterson one? Okay, so a couple questions. First of all, I don't know if the audience could hear or viewers could hear, but Ray is, Oscar's kind of singing that what he plays. He's like he's got the funky going, and it's running down his leg, as they would say. And then so there's that. The two questions. You're a grunter too, I heard.
Right.
And you've told me, hey, man, I'm a little hoarse tonight. I'm like, why are you hoarse? You're not singing shit, And then you're like, no, I grunt when I play.
Right.
There's that one. And the thing that you were playing there, was that a shout chorus, or was that just a spontaneous thing he was doing?
That was a spontaneous shout chorus.
Okay.
He just came up with it, and it became a shout. That wasn't the shout every night. And that setup that Oscar had, I could see, which I still use in my trio, I could see his hands. So if his hands were above the keys, I knew he was going to fill in the holes of the shout chorus. But when he raised them to clap his hands, I knew I had to fill, So
okay.
little things like that that people don't realize when you're playing. It's like, okay, he's going to clap his hand. That space is mine,
Yes.
Yeah. But the grunting thing, my favorite players groan, when they play it, and I don't think the groaning should overtake the music. But that's the intensity that you play. And there's this great story of Oscar Peterson. He'd sing his when he played, and Ray Brown, ho, 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 and Louis Bellson would play, and Louis would go, so he had kind of that sound, he did it. And Sarah Vaughn came out, and she says, fellas, you mind if I do the singing? you know. So, so it can't overtake the music. But another funny story about the groaning, Joe LaBarbera, Matt Wilson, and I teach just about every year up at Port Townsend, the Centrum Jazz Camp that John Clayton's director of, and 25 drum students in a master class. And one of them asked the difference in Joe playing in Bill Evans' trio and me playing in Oscar Peterson's trio. And so I said, well, I groan when I play. Oscar groaned. I told the story. And I said, you get that going, and that's your intensity that I also talked with Ed Thigpen about. You know, get that fire burning through your body, but you can't get past your wrists, you know, as far as volume. So I said, so I groan when I play. And my good friend, supposedly good friend, Joe LaBarbera says, yeah, I groan when you play too.
Oh God, I love that. I love that. Can you tell us quickly it's a story you've told often, but your first night with Oscar and the 1 minute rehearsal you had before?
Yeah. I kind of touched on this earlier about being prepared and making sure that whoever you're working for can't even imagine anybody else in that chair. You're the right person. And that's by doing your homework and going in prepared, knowing all the music, knowing everything about the person that you can, because that gets into the music also. So I'd studied the setup, and I thought I had the drums exactly in the right place. I got there early to set. I had just done the Tonight Show, the Johnny Carson show, the night before, and had to take a red eye subbing for Ed Shaughnessy on the Tonight Show with Doc Severinsen, flying to Boston in a 3-hour car ride to the first gig, and 2 hours of sleep and go to the sound check. You know, so I set up. I was in my tux. I knew they wore tuxes, and I thought I was in the right place. Bosendorfer piano's on the stage. Oscar comes up on the stage. He says, "Is there a stage manager somewhere?" And the stage manager runs out. "Yes, Dr. Peterson, what can I do for you?" He said, "Could you move my piano 6 inches closer to the drums?" Wow. Now, in all my years of playing, the pianist had never moved the piano to the drums. It's always get the drums over to the piano. And I couldn't believe it. And I think my mouth was open. I looked at him, and he knew I was looking at him. He didn't acknowledge it. And he turned around and says, "Jeffro, nice to have you here." And I went, "Oh, I have a nickname already, Jeffro." Okay, that's 2 things. I must be in. So he says, "Come on, we'll talk about it, what we're going to play in the dressing room." So after I get my cymbals up, I go in. He said, "We're going to do Let's Fall in Love, 2-beat brushes. And when you see me make a fist and drop it to the side," and he looked at me in the eye and he goes, "Wood," meaning pick up the sticks, we're going to get with it. Put the brushes down and let's go. And I said, okay. And he says, "All right, let's go play." So that was the rehearsal, you know, for the thing. And we had a beautiful set. He gave me 4 choruses on the first number, which he never did. You know, Ed Thigpen said he had to wait 6 months before Oscar traded 4s with him, you know, so I thought, well, okay, I guess I'm in here, you know.
Fantastic.
I was in for 5 years, from 90 to 95, with Ray Brown and Herb Ellis. It was such a great experience. I felt I was crawling into those old records, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, you've had so great experiences with so many of the great jazz people. That's why I think that their spirit is imbued within you, and I hear them coming out. I hear the Ella Fitzgerald. I hear the Harry Sweets Edison. Any special memories of Harry Sweets Edison and working with him?
Well, yeah. He was a guest of. I got to be careful with some of these Sweets Edison stories, but with Ray Brown, Gene Harris, and Sweets, you know, I'm the only white guy in the band and the youngest, and so Sweets is a guest of the band, and so we're in Park City, Utah, and Sweets, when he finished playing, he'd come over and stand right by my China cymbal, and he liked it. And he let me know he liked it. So he'd stand there and he'd just kind of look down, and we had a shuffle going. I mean, it was like kind of an out-of-body experience. And I hear, he's giggling. I'm going, "Man, what are you laughing at? This is some of the hottest stuff we've ever played. What are you laughing at?" And I looked at it, and I finally said, "Sweets, what's the matter with you?" And he says, "I knew you was a blue-eyed devil."
I thought he was going to say, "I knew you were a buckwheat."
He had that one too. Yeah. And he was talking about this club owner that wouldn't pay any money. He said he's tighter than a chicken's instep. So all these great sweet stories that just come into your head all the time.
Well, he loved you, I know, and loved working with you. And
Oh,
you do the best Sweets impressions down to the walk. And so whenever I'm with you, I make you do the walk so I can have that memory in my soul.
Well, I got to tell you now, the older I get, I'm not doing an impression. That is my walk. But you mentioned Ella too, and the great story with Ella is that and this goes out to all the drummers who are afraid to play when they're with a vocalist, because not all vocalists. I thought you kind of had to be careful and play softer behind them. And my first night with Ella, I was kind of tipping, and make sure I heard her okay, And she turned around after the first tune, sweetheart. She turned around, and she said, "Go ahead and give it to me, honey." Mm-hmm. And I went right to those old recordings with Gus Johnson playing with her, like he was playing with a bassy band, even though it was a trio. And I laid it in there like that, and she winked at me after the tune. It's like, okay. Then we get off the stage, and she was waiting for the three of us to get off, and she said, "Was I okay tonight, fellas?" I said,
good.
"Were you okay? You're Ella Fitzgerald." She says, "Okay, yeah. Well, just checking." So one of the sweetest people I ever met.
What a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. As I mentioned in the beginning, you have created your own unique individual style. And I just want Alexa to pull up a final video. And we have to move quickly now. We might go a little bit over because I do want to get everything in. But I want us to hear a little bit of your brush work. And this is one that John Clayton arranged for the big band. And it's called Indiana. Go ahead and play that one, Alexa. So you have this amazing, unique brush style. There's the one thing you were doing there where I've seen you do it, where you throw the brush and that makes the sound. Is that your thing? Is that something you stole? Where did that come? I've never seen anybody else do it.
A lot of things happen from mistakes. I've dropped a brush before, and I like the result of it. It's like, I didn't mean to drop it, but that's hipper than anything I was going to think of, And then playing with my hands, that started, I'd seen Papa Joe do it. I'd seen Shelly Manne do it, but I hadn't really explored it too much. And when I first joined the LA4, my feature was St. Thomas, which had been Shelly Manne's feature. And that was the only feature in the book for the drums. I got tired of what I was playing every night. So I went for something. It was in Nanaimo, BC, Diana Krall's hometown, oddly enough. Mm-hmm. And I went for some fill, and it was 78. And I caught the stick on the rim, and the stick went flying. And I just got mad and threw the other stick down and thought, okay, now what are you going to do, hot shot, And the place erupted after the drum solo. And Ray Brown turned to me and says, "I think you better keep that in the book."
Oh, that's beautiful.
So a lot of things happen by mistake,
Well, yeah, your brush technique, everybody talks about it, and it's simply fantastic. As we come to a close here, I just want to give you a personal thanks because you have, in your own way, mentored me too years ago, and hopefully you've forgotten about this gig because I was so bad on it. But you invited me to play with your trio, a special guest with a dentist. It's a dentist's house or something. Do you remember that? The guy was a dentist, and the guy was a dentist in like Wisconsin. Do you remember this?
Oh yeah. Hospital Supply, Cudahy, Mike Cudahy. Yeah.
And so you said, "Hey, I want you to be guest with my band," and we played at his house. I think it was.
Right. That's right.
And so we're at rehearsal, and your trio ran a few things because stripping what you got, and I just went, "Oh no." And you're like, "Well, what tunes you want to play?" And I don't know. We could play some blues, but you were like, you kind of changed a little bit in the vibe, and you're like, you need some tunes, and so I named some tunes. I was real nervous to be around you, and then you said you got any up tempo, and you said you need some up tempos, And you had hired me for the gig, and I accepted, and I should have had my stuff together. And I never forgot that. And on the way home, you kind of said, look, make sure you expand your repertoire. You need some up tempos, you need some medium, you need some blues, you need some ballads. And, you know, I think the gig went okay. But you mentored me in that way, and you said, you know, you got to have this stuff if you're going to be playing gigs. You've never been one to hold your tongue, and you didn't that night. But it was very
I don't
helpful for me.
remember that. I just remember the gig being great, but I don't remember that.
No, you nailed my ass.
Well, I was nice about it, wasn't I?
You were nice about it. It was a good bedside manner. But it was your way of teaching me and mentoring me at the time, and I just appreciate your patience with me and let me do that. I want to just quote you because you do that not only for me, but you are an example for that yourself. You just told us how you asked Mel Lewis, what could I be doing better? So you're a student of the music. And one of the things I just quote you, I'll try to go fast and edit here. He said, you said, you should always be searching and you should surround yourself with great musicians that you get to play music with. And if you're listening, then you're all on this journey together. On any given night, the direction will go a certain way and it perks your ears up. And you have to serve the music and you've got to meet the challenge of what the other musicians are doing. You said, I think that's one of the secrets. It's always playing with great musicians. And they can be as good as you or better than you, but never play with musicians who aren't up to your standard. You said, that's the challenge of this music. And then you said, you can never be lazy in this music because there's always something around the corner that's going to punch you right in the nose. I think we can, let me see. You said, oh, if you start thinking that you've got it all covered, look out. Because at the next 8 bars, something is going to nail you. And then you said, I also think boredom can set in. I don't like to see musicians who just sort of are comfortable doing what they're doing and they know what works, so they just do that. They're like, I've gotten this far, so I'm just going to stay with it. Like, this is good enough. I think we all can see, you said, when that happens to certain players. That has not happened to you. You are a living example of greatness as a drummer, and you walk your talk. And as a teacher, you can demonstrate exactly what you're teaching to people. That's what makes you a great teacher. And you're in great demand as a teacher. I saw the picture of your Zoom thing set up in your studio where you've got the thing and you can still teach remotely now. People just have to have a lot of money to get you as a teacher. But truly, you are one of those great gifts to the world of jazz. And you are now considered one of the giants. And that's why Wynton Marsalis goes to you when he needs a good sub drummer. He calls you and you guys get together and there's a certain magic that happens when you're on the stage with him, as there is on bandstands across the world and across the country. Whenever you're on there, you ignite the bandstand with your playing and it always feels good. So I just want to, on behalf of all the musicians that play with you and are able to experience that beat, I just want to thank you for what you've given the world and you will continue to do. Now, quickly tell us about what you've been doing during this quarantine and how you're working, because I know you have you've gone through a lot. I mean, so quarantine is not a new thing for you. So just take a few minutes and tell us your other quarantines that you've gone through in your life.
Right. Well, I thought I was a good tennis player. First of all, thank you for that, Byron. That's really, really kind of you. I appreciate that. I thought I was a tennis player for 35 years, and I would play. When I moved out to LA, I'd play 5 days a week and then play gigs at night, and it was overuse of the elbow. And I didn't play drums incorrectly, but I played tennis incorrectly. So I blew my elbow out playing tennis. And I actually blew it out when I was with Ray in Chicago and ended up playing 2 sets that night after I blew the ligament off the joint. So it was a 3-month recovery. Actually, I had after I had the surgery to reattach the ligament. But I used that time for research and homework and went back to the Lunsford Band and Fletcher Henderson and the early beginnings of jazz because I hadn't really, I didn't delve into that as much, and the schools didn't delve into that I was going to then. So I took it upon myself to create my own curriculum, only listen to great music. Funny story, there was a bad CD that I was on that arrived while I was still laid up, and I heard 8 bars of it. I took it out of the portable CD player, bounced it off of the opposite wall. To this day, I haven't listened to that CD. It was, you know, I only listen to great music, and when I get back to play, not if I can get back to play, is what I kept in mind. And they wrote me up in the medical journal as being the quickest recovery from this epicondylitis, and wanted to know how I did it, and talked about positive thinking and when I get back and all of that. So then 2 years later, I didn't give up. I took up golf, and I had an old sports injury in my left elbow. So I blew that ligament off on the golf course, but I knew what to do for 3 months. So I did the same thing. So that's what I'm doing during this quarantine. I'm listening 5 hours a day to music. I didn't play drums for 3.5 weeks. You get the mental cobwebs out. And my loose concept, felt great when I just picked up a pair of sticks again. So a lot of it's a mental approach and how you look at it, instead of woe is me, when is this thing going to end? It's like when it ends, I'm going to be ready, you know. So I'm keeping a positive outlook on this, and at least I'm going to be ready, you know, when it does happen.
Well, that's got to be the Hamilton motto, because you always are ready when we're on the bandstand.
Thank you.
With you.
Uh-oh, did we freeze again?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, we froze again. Did I miss anything?
No, you didn't miss. It's gonna unfreeze in a second here. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah. I think your latest CD on Capri.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about your latest CD. I think it's on Capri.
It is. The last few have been on Capri, and this one we were hoping to have it out by now, and they're waiting on the main release being this summer. But a lot of people are asking for it, so we just posted it a couple of days ago on Facebook and Instagram, because I want to get that out there. And one of the tunes on there, going back to John von Olin, is a song that he wrote. He was a great pianist, and a lot of people don't know about that. And if you want to hear that, he has a CD where he just played solo piano, called The Pond. And I did The Pond with my trio. We did an arrangement of it, and that's one of the things that I'm proudest of on this CD. And the title track is one of Tamir Hendelman's original compositions, another one that's impossible to play, and as the title would imply. So I'm really happy with this CD, and John Hamer.
What's the name of it?
Catch Me If You Can. I'm sorry, Catch Me If You Can is the name of it, and it's John Hamer's first CD with us on bass. So I really love this CD, and I'll get you one, Byron.
Oh, please, please. I always love it when I don't have to pay for your music. Look, we want to remind our listeners that on Thursday, Zach Thompson will be back with another one of his great interviews. And we want to remind all our viewers that if you like this interview, please share it with your friends, because we want to give the joy of Jeff Hamilton to everybody throughout the country and the world. Jeff Hamilton, once again, thank you so much for lifting us up and inspiring us with your drumming. I can't wait to see you again on the stage after this quarantine, where you will light it up once again. Thank you for all you do for jazz.
Well, thank you. And we're all in this together, and my hat's off to you for bringing that joy every performance to Columbus, Ohio. And it's such a healthy atmosphere to come and visit you and the folks in Columbus. So I look forward to it too.
Well, we love you. We'll see everybody next time. Remember to share this video. Thank you, Jeff Hamilton. We'll see you soon.
All right. Take care, my man.